I hear so many times people say, I can't create anything because I don't know how to do it. Well, 10 years ago, I didn't know how to create it either. So I think if you talk negatively to yourself and say, I can't do it, then you won't be able to do it. So how do you know what you're capable of unless you try? So I think just give it a try, whatever it is, whether it's TechSmith, Audiate, Canva, creating little videos, it doesn't matter. You've got to start from somewhere. So one of my first videos on YouTube was absolute rubbish and I cringed looking at it, but it's now got 270,000 views. So it resonated with people. So as long as the information is good, it doesn't matter. Your lighting is poor, whether you have a lapel microphone, really doesn't matter. As long as you're sharing something of value, just do it.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are and wherever you're watching from. My name is Matt Pierce, host of the Visual Lounge, and today we are talking about something I think every organization needs to be better at, and that is using visuals. You probably are saying, but Matt, we use visuals. But are you really using visuals? Are you using them effectively? Are you using them in impactful ways? And we've got a great guest that's going to help walk us through some of those things today. So let's go ahead and dive in. In 2013, Nicky Pasquier launched her business with no prior experience in business or social media. Following a 16-year career as a senior legal secretary in civil litigation, she took a bold step, leaving her job to start working from home as a virtual assistant. The following year, in 2014, a friend introduced her to Canva, which had just entered into open beta. The platform inspired her so much that she committed herself to becoming a Canva expert. Fast forward now 10 years later, and she is now one of the approximately 55 global Canva verified experts and a Canva creator, designing templates for the Canva library. She also aspires to become a TechSmith expert, which we love, by the way. Her passion lies in teaching other small business owners how to gain online viability using unique visual content. But with that said, please help me welcome Nicky Pasquier to the Visual Lounge. Well, I'm so excited to speak with you because you have such
you too, Matt.
I mean, you've been doing such great stuff with Canva, which is, obviously a platform that does a lot of visuals. And obviously we've been talking a little bit about more TechSmith things that you could do. But I want to start in with the first question we ask everybody. And because you're such an expert, I'm really excited to see what you come up with. What is one tip you could give us to help us use images better, to make better images? What would you say?
Images and videos. So consistency is my key word that I see so many people do wrong. So when they're sharing videos or graphics or even photographs, they're not consistent with their brand style. So, and it makes me wince. I see so many beautiful graphics, but every time somebody shares a different graphic or video, the font's different, the color's slightly off, or it wasn't the same as before. And that's quite damaging, I think, for brand credibility. It makes you look slightly amateurish. And the good thing is it's so fixable. It's very easy to fix, but you must keep consistent with your brand colors, your fonts, your style, your voice.
Well, I want to dig into this just a little bit because I think that you're absolutely right and it's so important. But what I see, and I'm a victim of this because I'm maybe disorganized more than I should be. What advice would you give about that would help someone to really stay consistent? Because I think the challenge isn't so much like, oh, we picked a brand font and we're going to use that. It's like forgetting the brand color hex code, or like, is there a good thing that you found that helps you stay consistent or teach others to be consistent in this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in TechSmith, so when I create my videos now to save myself a lot of time and to make sure I stay consistent. So if I want to add an arrow to over the top of my video, or if I want to add a speech bubble or even text, what I'll do is I'll create a theme in TechSmith and I'll save it. And that means I don't have to recreate that look anymore. I've got the colors saved. I've got the text or the font saved. And all I have to do is click a button and that will apply the particular style. So it not only saves you time, it maintains that consistency of brand style. So that's in TechSmith, and that's very, very easy to do. And again, with filters, if you use one filter, use it throughout. Don't chop and change them, like I see a lot of people doing, because a filter will become part of your recognizable style. And in terms of Canva, most people will probably know that there's a brand kit. And if you're really going to be using Canva professionally, which I assume most people will, if they're using Canva for business, your brand kit, you can save so many things now. So you can not only save your brand fonts, your colors, icons, any little icons that you use with your visuals. You can even save your brand voice, which is fantastic, any brand videos, brand photographs. So they're all there and they're instantly available whenever you create a new template. So you just click on your brand kit and apply your colors. And it's that simple and that easy. But the pity is not many people know how important it is for a
Yeah.
business.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I know I've got some designers that are in the marketing department who are probably saying, hallelujah, thank you, sing it, because it is so important. And I mean, I admit I'm part of the problem, so I'm going to work harder on that. But Nikki, I want to talk to you about kind of our topic that we introduced at the beginning of the show today is this idea that I think a lot of organizations are using images. But are we using them effectively, or are we really on top of kind of what we could be doing and getting the value from them? And I'm curious kind of where you sit in this, because you're working with a lot of, smaller organizations. How are we doing? Are we doing okay, or are people struggling still?
I think people are struggling in terms of, again, like I say, the branding isn't always consistent. But if you think about from a marketing point of view, every piece of content you create needs to take you towards your business goals. So I see a lot of people wasting time on Instagram, perhaps TikTok. I don't use TikTok, but they're sharing stuff which doesn't get them closer to their brand goals. So whether that means selling more, creating a community, they're not thinking about their overall goals. So they're wasting a lot of time. And so when I see visuals on, say, LinkedIn, Facebook, I think to myself, well, where's that going to take you? And often it's not taking them anywhere. They're just sharing it for fun, which is great. Lots of people do things for fun. But when it comes to business, you really need to make the most of your time and think, how is this video, how is this graphic going to increase my sales, bottom line?
So let me ask you a question about this, because I have the great privilege of working with in this area of marketing a lot now with social media and putting out some of those brand messages and some things. I'm curious, because it does seem like, particularly in social media, let's take Instagram for an example. We could talk about TikTok. I think there's similarities, but there's also differences. But from an Instagram perspective, one of the things I see is that when people are going there for certain reasons, like as consumers, right? They're going there for certain reasons. And a lot of times that's maybe more of an entertainment, enjoyment, even if they are a business person. And so what's your perspective on how to find the balance then between, like, hey, I want you to buy this thing, I want you to engage with this thing, and, I'm trying to just kind of give you a flavor of the brand maybe. How do you find
Sure.
that balance?
Do you know, when I was starting out, one of the really valuable pieces of information I was given as a newbie, is I had no business experience at all. And I think it was Mike Alton, who still is, a business blogger. He said to me, make sure 80% of your content is related to your business and 20% isn't asking for anything. So you're sharing what interests you so that people get to know you as a person, the person behind the brand. So I would say the 80-20 split is probably about right, actually, in terms of what kind of content to create.
So from a visual perspective, as you're giving advice to organizations and looking at this, let's talk about the 80% first. Like, what types of things do you think visually should organizations be thinking about? Because it does seem like there's a lot of options there, but it's often, I think it's hard to know exactly what I'm going to show that will maybe connect or strike a right chord. Obviously, I think I've, grew up in a world where writing was key, and we've kind of switched gears, right? Like obviously images have become such more, when I'm scrolling through, that's the thing I see. I don't see the caption unless I purposely choose to see the caption. So I'm curious, what you think strikes kind of that connection point, or and I probably different for every organization, different, based on what they're selling or whatever they're doing. But what can they kind of look at and say like, yeah, here's some things I can start with, any principles, guidelines, things like that?
Gosh, that is such a difficult question
It
because, as you
is.
say, it varies for every single business depending on what they're selling, who their audience is. And it's really, really key to know your audience. I mean, not just, oh, they're small businesses. Well, that doesn't tell you a great deal. You've really got to do a deep dive into who your audience is, what makes them tick, what do they want to achieve. And I think once you understand that, then you can tailor your content accordingly. So you need to know what's going to make them sit up and think, oh, that's interesting. So when they're flicking through Instagram, what is going to snag their attention? I guess that comes to one of my favorite points is the power of visual content. What makes visual content so powerful in terms of marketing when it comes to marketing a business? And I've got a couple of slides actually, and Matt, I think I'm going to share my screen here at this point because it really does capture the power of visual content. Why? I know we all know that we should be using visual content, but why should we be using visual content? It's really fascinating to me. I don't know about anybody else, but it's fascinating for me to kind of dig into this. And what I discovered years ago, quite by accident, and I became quite a geek about this subject, was that actually human beings are hardwired to process visual information. And in fact, we do it so fast, we do it faster, 30 times faster than blinking. So just think about that for a minute. Just think about how fast blinking is. And we, as a human person, we absorb visual content, we digest it, we make sense of it 30 times faster than we blink. Okay?
Yep.
And then when it comes to visual content, we also recall visually much better than we do anything we hear. So we generally absorb 10% of what we hear, 20% of what we read, but 80% of what we see. So that's quite powerful when you think of graphics on social media and so forth, which leads me to the next slide. And simply by combining text with images, it will increase our memory retention and understanding by as much as 323%. And that is really powerful. And so if you think about what you should be sharing a relevant graphic and just a headline and maybe a little bit of explainer text underneath. So imagine you're on a motorway and you're driving in your car and you see one of these big side boardings on the motorway. Now you have seconds, literally seconds, to view it and understand what that says. So imagine when people are scrolling through Instagram, see how quick that is. You just have seconds to snag their attention. So that's what you should be thinking about when creating graphics, for instance. You need to be thinking about what can grab your audience's attention, and then add a little bit of explainer text and a heading just to snag their attention further and get them to click on that link or to click on the caption underneath. That's just a key bit of information there.
Yeah, no, I greatly appreciate that, giving it the breakdown, right? And I do love the idea that you've got just a fraction of a second, right, to grab someone, because the power of the scroll, and so make sure I'm on camera here. So it's fast, right? You're looking really quickly. And
seconds, yeah.
Yeah, and I've got to imagine there's a role here, because you've talked a lot about, like, obviously the breakdown between kind of from the attention, what we remember and the memory. How much is emotion, kind of capturing emotion or striking emotion, play into this? Because, again, thinking about my own consumer habits of what draws me in, it's usually things that or make me laugh, make me stop and think, or, whatever. I have some others that it's a visceral reaction of like, keep going as fast as I can, which is the opposite of what we want. But again, what kind of role does emotion play in this?
Oh, massive. I mean, visual content is, especially photographs. And this is why we share things, is because we want our followers or our friends to um, experience something that's made us laugh. And visuals, photographs, whatever it is, has that ability to connect with us emotionally. A video, particularly because it's so much more engaging. Video, you can really get to know the person behind the brand. So if you can connect with your audience at an emotional level, you can also sell to them. And when I talk to small businesses about this, the power of video, particularly, I think about these rather horrible charity videos that we see on TV sometimes, and they do it absolutely perfectly. What they do is they share a video, say a donkey which is suffering because it's overloaded and it's hot and it can't cope, and it really pulls on your heartstrings and it makes you want to cry or anything like me. But what it does is, and then it pans to another sort of video, and then it shows you what can happen to that donkey if you donate to that charity, because that donkey will then go to a sanctuary. So then the charity ends by saying you can donate by texting such and such a number. And of course, Muggins here always falls for things like that. I reach for my purse and I donate. But that's the power of visual content. If you can connect emotionally with your audience, you can sell to them.
So I absolutely have seen that myself, and there's obviously balances there, right? I think if you probably get desensitized if that's all you ever saw, so you got to be careful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do wonder in this process. I think there's got to be, I just mentioned a pitfall, right? If you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over,
Yeah.
it's gonna start to not work because people are gonna be like, move on. Are there other pitfalls in kind of these organizations for using images that just kind of people get hung up on typically that you see, or they kind of get in the way of what they're trying to do? Maybe, and again, I think oftentimes it's unintentional, but are there things that you have seen?
I think variety is key, isn't it? I mean, don't keep doing the same things in the same way as you should vary if you're constantly sharing photographs of the same kind of photographic content,
Mm-hmm.
mix it up a little bit. Create a 1 minute video to share on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever you're sharing your content. Mix it up. Create little gifs, for instance. Add a little bit of humor. So mixture is probably key. You don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again because, as you say, people just switch off. They get bored. They think, well, nothing new here. I've seen this all before. So definitely keep pushing out new content in different sorts of ways.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Nicky, I guess as we get close to wrapping up here, are any other thoughts here? I kind of actually want to talk about color. Is that okay if we talk about color?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Because
I
I
mean,
know,
it's key, isn't it, for branding?
yeah, and because we talked about obviously organizations need to use kind of consistent styles, brand colors. So there's that kind of mention of color. We talked about kind of these visuals and making them work. But what role do you feel like color is playing in that communication process for brands and organizations?
Oh gosh, there are so many, and people don't realize. I mean, I was lucky. I picked for my brand colors because I knew nothing about business or branding or anything like that. I picked my two favorite colors, which are pink and orange. It's my favorite clash of colors, and I was lucky actually because they really did convey my sort of personality. So pink is generally feminine, and orange is zesty, it's energy, and so for me, I just lucked out. That really did convey my personality. But if you don't know anything about the psychology of color, you could be very unlucky. So, for instance, red is usually it signals, it's a warning sign, isn't it? We see
Mm-hmm.
signs on the road outlined in red, and it usually triggers a kind of warning in our heads, and that's really subconscious. We're not aware of it happening, but it just happens. But you also have to bear in mind where your audience is. So, for instance, red in China is lucky. So, if you're marketing to most people in China, you might consider using red, whereas people in the West tend to associate red with danger. And I find it absolutely fascinating. So, if you think about blue, blue is the most, what would I say? It's a color that both males and females favor
Mhm.
equally, in equal measure. And it's also a color of trust. So if you think about the colors that banks use, so PayPal uses blue. What else uses blue? Banks in the UK use blue. Barclays uses blue. In the UK, we have a medical setup called the NHS, and that uses blue in its branding. So it's definitely associated with trust. So if you're going to build trust in an audience, you might want to opt for blue. And so I find these color signals that are very subconscious. You do need to be aware of them. And similarly, green. Green is a very calming color. So if you're going to be creating organic products, beauty products, you might want to consider using green as brand color, that kind of thing.
So I have to ask because I don't know a lot about the color psychology of color, right? Like I knew red when China's lucky and things like that, but like I have a feeling most people they're not thinking about this, right? Because they're not designers, they're not kind of going deep. What advice would you give to someone who's like, hey, I do, maybe whether it's a personal brand or they're for their business, they're looking at maybe how they can make some changes. How do you go about figuring this out? Like you said, you feel like you got lucky in your pink and your orange color, and I think there's also a skill there to be able to put those two colors together in my mind because I'm thinking how does that work? But what advice would you give us? Because I do think it is something that even outside of the brand itself, like you can use these colors in ways to kind of signal those things. But if you don't know, how are you going to figure that out?
Well, there are loads of resources actually. I've got it's quite old actually. I built a board on Pinterest years ago, and I pinned a load of stuff about branding, color psychology, the power of visual content, why we tend to use visual content, and why it's such a perfect vehicle for marketing. So I created a Pinterest board, and I'm very happy to share the link to that board. If anybody is in doubt about their brand colors, they can have a look and pin those pins on their own Pinterest board. So I would say it's the holy grail if you're in any doubt about visual content or branding, the psychology of color. I would say I will share the link to that Pinterest board and anybody can have a look.
Yeah, I would love that. We could put that in the comments and the
Sure.
details below. That would be awesome. I do have a question because you've started to do more video, right? That's something that you've been taking
Yeah.
on, doing a lot more video. I'm curious, how does the color play into the videos that you're creating? Because obviously it's not a brand, it's not like an icon or kind of the standard colors. But what are you using color for to help your videos? Same thing or something different?
No, it's just the icons that I use. So if I use, the text overlay as well is always on brand, and any icons that I use. But also, if I place a short video, in a frame, export it to Canva, and I'll have a brand backdrop. So a little slide is in my brand colors, and I'll pop my video into a frame. So that's on brand always. So, I mean, I don't always wear my brand colors. A lot of people do if they really want to be on brand. I'm not particularly fussed about that. I don't get too worried about things like that. But as long as the main things like your text and any icons that you use, like arrows, speech bubbles,
Mm-hmm.
things like that, are just using your brand colors and your brand fonts as well.
All right. Yeah, it makes absolute sense to you. But again, going back to what you said at the beginning, make sure you're consistent, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, Nikki, this has been awesome. I feel like I've got a bunch of things I need to go look at and figure out, like from a brand perspective. How am I doing? Am I doing okay for TechSmith? Am I doing okay for myself?
You're doing perfectly. I love the graphics that you create actually.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll take the compliments whenever I can get them. But Nicky, it's time. We're going to move into our speedrun question. And for those who are new to the show, if you're a first time listener, this is speedrun questions are quick, fast questions determined by the roll of a dice with quick, fast answers. So we're going to play our stinger, and here we go. All right. Well, let's bring up the dice cam. It's all set up in our first roll. Here we go. The dot is at the bottom, so that is a 6. So, Nicky, share a piece of advice that you've received that has had lasting impact on you. Doesn't have to be about images or video, but what's a piece of advice that's had lasting impact on you?
Oh, crikey. That's a good question. The one thing, because as a business owner, I could get very stressed most of the time. So, and I worry about stuff. I'm a terrible worrier. I can lie awake at night thinking, what if I did this? So what the best piece of information I was given was just focus on the present, because the past is done and the future hasn't happened yet. The future is in the present right now, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. So just focus on the now and stop worrying about everything else.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Need to do some more focusing on the present myself. Well, are you ready for your next question?
Yep.
4. Ooh, this is a fun one. What's your guilty pleasure song or movie that you secretly, if you're going to say it here, it's not really a secret, but what's your guilty pleasure song or movie that you secretly love?
ABBA.
Ah!
I put ABBA, when my husband's out at work, I put ABBA on and I dance around the kitchen singing ABBA very loudly as well, and very badly.
We'll have to talk afterwards, because if you've seen the movie Eurovision, you know the love of ABBA that comes through.
Oh, yes. So good. And I'm of that age where, I remember Waterloo at the Eurovision Song Contest.
That's
I'm
right.
that old.
Yeah, it's super fun. So, all right, we got one more question in us. So here we go. Last roll of the die. And it is going to be, we can't have 2. That's 2 episodes in a row where we got doubles. Okay, number 10, though. Ooh, this is a tricky one. If you had to shift careers out of the world of design and doing the work that you're doing now, what would you do?
Fitness.
Okay.
Fitness. I regret not carrying on my fitness and my sport. And to narrow it down, I would say kind of water sports. Because I used to do, I learnt to windsurf years ago on the south coast of the UK. And I did some windsurfing in Greece, which is one of my favourite holiday destinations. And that was back in the day when windsurf boards were so big and so heavy and so long. And the rigs were so heavy. I just managed to get the rig out of the water and then I'd fall out. I'd fall in the water. So now, if you remember from the Olympics, windsurfers, they're called IQ foils. They're literally above the water. I would love to do that. So yes, I would love to go back and do fitness all over again and do sport.
Yeah, I love it. And super cool to be able to do that in Greece. No big deal. Whatever.
In Greece, yeah. It's far too horrible in the UK to do it.
Well, if you ever come to the United States, Lake Michigan, not huge waves, but it's beautiful and it's great beaches, great water. So
sounds lovely. Sounds lovely.
Well, Nicky, before we got 2 more things to talk about real quick. If people want to connect with you, they want to learn more from you, where should they go? What should they look for?
I guess my website, which is in here.
Yep.
Down the bottom there, www.nickypasquier.com. I'm also on LinkedIn a lot. You'll also find me on Canva, because I have my own portfolio of Canva templates. So you can use any of those for your designs, whether you're an educator or just looking for a graphic to share on Instagram or LinkedIn or swipe files or whatever. You'll find them there, or even cards. Printables are one of my favorite things to design, so you can find me in Canva. Instagram I'm not using quite so much these days, so I'm tending to focus on LinkedIn, Canva, YouTube. So I have a YouTube channel. I'm nearing on 37,000 subscribers now. I'm having a little rethink at the moment, so I haven't produced anything for about a month because I'm having a as I said, rethink about what sort of content I'm going to create for the next year. But yes, you can definitely find me there.
Fantastic. And absolutely, we'll put all those links in the description below so people can go and easily find you. So as we wrap up the show, Nicky, you know this was coming, this point. This is always the hard part. Nicky, what is your final take for today?
Okay, so I hear so many times people say, I can't create anything because I don't know how to do it. Well, 10 years ago, I didn't know how to create it either. So I think if you talk negatively to yourself and say, I can't do it, then you won't be able to do it. So how do you know what you're capable of unless you try? So I think just give it a try, whatever it is, whether it's TechSmith, Audiate, Canva, creating little videos, it doesn't matter. You've got to start from somewhere. So one of my first videos on YouTube was absolute rubbish and I cringed looking at it, but it's now got 270,000 views. So it resonated with people. So as long as the information is good, it doesn't matter your lighting is poor, whether you have a lapel microphone, really doesn't matter. As long as you're sharing something of value, just do it.
Yeah, I love that. And wow, what a great video, because my first video, I think, has 12 views. So, and I cringed at it too. So, Nicky, thank you so much for spending time with me this morning. And always appreciate
that. Pleasure.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And the connections that we have on LinkedIn, I'm sure we'll be talking some more here soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.
You bet. All right, everybody, you heard it. You got to be consistent with your brand. You got to be thinking about how your images are going to impact and connect with your audience. You've really got to be thinking about what are you trying to say and how are you saying it, and then go do it and practice. I love that advice at the end, because the thing is, the reality is, whether you're making images or video or doing whatever, yeah, it takes practice, it takes work, it takes putting in some effort. But the more you do it, the easier it's going to get and the better it's going to get. And part of that is the whole idea of the show, is that looking for ways to help you to get a little bit better, a little bit smarter about using images and videos in your work and the things that you do. So if you've got feedback or comments, we always love to hear from you. Of course, you can always reach out at the Visual Lounge at techsmith.com. Find us on socials, just tag at TechSmith. We will respond, of course, and we hope that you take a little time to level up every single day. Thanks, everybody.